If you clicked on this video, I'm sure you can relate to the pain of being undisciplined or at the very least inconsistent. I'm sure you can relate to getting really motivated to start something, whether it's a training program, a weightlifting program, a running challenge that you're doing, or whatever it is that you're trying to set out to do, only to find out that after some time that motivation has worn off and you are not doing the thing that you said you were going to do anymore. You're not doing that training program, you are not following your diet. So now you find yourself in this kind of start and stop situation where you keep trying to restart that diet, you keep trying to restart that training program. And honestly, it just takes more energy to restart the thing over and over and over again than it would have taken if we had just been consistent in the first place. So what can we do about this problem? How can we stay consistent so we don't waste all this energy starting and stopping, starting and stopping, starting and stopping, and so we don't face the pain and the lack of self-esteem that we feel with ourselves, a lack of self-confidence, a lack of self-trust that we feel with ourselves when we say we're going to do something and then we end up being inconsistent and undisciplined with it. Well, the best way that I have found to fight that inconsistency and that lack of discipline and the pain that comes with those things is through habits. Maybe you've heard the saying that goes, first you make your habits and then your habits make you. That saying is so true. There's actually this really interesting book called The 4 Disciplines of Execution that talks about the difference between lead measures and lag measures. And I won't go too deep into it because I do want to get to these 5 habits, but the basic idea is that a lag measure is something like make $1 million in revenue, whereas the lead measure is what leads to that lag measure. Such as, for example, if I make 100 sales calls every day, then I know I'll close a certain percentage of them, and over a period of a year, I will have achieved that $1 million. And so the basic idea of differentiating between lag measures and lead measures is that we don't control the lag measures, but we do control the lead measures. We do control the efforts and the actions and the habits that we put in. And the idea is that if we just focus on those lead measures, the lag measures will come. But if we focus on the lag measures, then we'll become overwhelmed because we have no control over them. Moreover, lag measures are often over the long term, and so when we focus on something that is so far away, it can really overwhelm us and it can really demotivate us. The same idea of lead measures and lag measures applies to habits. First, you make your habits, and then your habits make you. Now we got that out of the way, let's get into the 5 habits that we can start taking today to start staying disciplined and consistent. And by the way, the last habit actually ties every other habit together. One thing that you can do that will help you stay disciplined and consistent is morning routines. I love morning routines because they set you up for the day. I'm a big believer that if you can just control the first hour of the day and the last hour of the day and be hyper disciplined for the first hour and the last hour, the middle of the day will just sort of fall into place. In other words, if I can be really disciplined for the first hour and I can follow a routine for the last hour, the middle of the day will sort of just follow a natural sense of order, and I will have less chaos in my life. And so without less chaos, I can be more disciplined and I can be more consistent. And also, even if you're just limiting it to just the first hour of the day, that first hour sets the tone for the rest of the day. If you have an organized and orderly and disciplined first hour of the day, that momentum will also build. So if you have bad momentum for the first hour, that will trickle down. And if you have good momentum for the first hour, that will also trickle down. A great way to take control of that first hour so you can set yourself up for the rest of the day is to do some form of morning routine. If you can start your day training your discipline muscle and you can start your day improving and increasing your self-confidence because you know that you did something that you set out to do, aka your morning routine, that feeling of self-confidence and that stronger discipline muscle will serve you for the rest of the day. Now, I actually made a video about my morning routine. I made it a few months back, so my morning routines actually changed a little bit, but if you want to check out what my morning routine was a few months ago and what it kind of is now, you can click somewhere up here. That video actually features this little rascal right here. Say hi to the people, Gigi. Another habit that helps me stay disciplined and consistent is the habit of breaking down goals. When our only goals are really big, it is almost impossible to stay consistent and disciplined with them. The reason for this is that when they're so big, they are so far away and they feel so far out of our reach that even if we can muster up a ton of motivation to go after that giant thing, eventually that big burst of motivation will wear off and then you're just left with this insane goal that feels so out of reach. And so now you're just demotivated and now you're not pursuing your goals anymore. But if we can take those big goals and break them down into little smaller goals, in other words, take that big goal and break it down into goal 1, goal 2, goal 3, goal 4, goal 5, goal 6, goal 7, all the way to goal 100 or whatever it is until you get to that goal, then you can remain disciplined and consistent because it's much easier to achieve that little goal 1 and that little goal 2 than it is to maintain yourself motivated and consistent and disciplined with something that just feels so out of reach that feels like you're never going to get done. And also, breaking down big goals into smaller goals keeps you rewarded. In other words, if I set a big goal and even if I'm somehow able to maintain discipline and stay consistent in the pursuit of that giant goal, I might not reach that goal for 2 or 5 years. So basically, I will be working for 2 or 5 years with absolutely zero reward. But if I can break that big goal down into smaller goals, I can have the reward of achieving goal number 1, achieving goal number 2, achieving goal number 3. And that helps create a underlying persistent form of motivation and reward that helps you keep moving forward. Because instead of saying, holy crap, I'm not achieving anything, you're saying, hey, I keep achieving things. This is pretty cool. Another thing you also want to do when it comes to goals is to make sure that your goals are not vague and that they are more specific. Because if your goal is something like get fit, get rich, or whatever, you don't really know what it is that you're trying to do. What does get rich mean? What does get fit mean? But if you break it down to, I want to weigh 155 pounds and be under 10% body fat, then you know exactly what you need to do. But if your goal is to just be fit, you're going to look at yourself in the mirror and go, am I fit? I don't know. And then you're going to start thinking and thinking and thinking, and you're going to overthink the vagary that you just created, and it's going to create anxiety and overwhelm, and that's going to prevent you from staying disciplined and consistent. But when we have specific intentions and we know specifically what our goals are, it makes it much easier to stay disciplined and consistent. The third habit is the habit of accountability. This is by far my favorite habit for anybody watching out there. If you have watched a ton of these videos and you have read a ton of these books and you have done a ton of this work and you're still looking for something that will work at a different kind of level in a different kind of way, this habit is the one. The reason this habit is the one is because most of the other habits, most of the other things all have to do with you and yourself. In other words, it has to do with getting your mind right. It has to do with getting your habits right. It has to do with those sorts of things. Now, the difference with this habit is that accountability is external. And so if you're struggling to stay disciplined internally, you can use external accountability to help you stay disciplined. It is much, much, much harder to lie to yourself about whether you are staying disciplined and whether you are actually being consistent and whether you are actually putting in the work and whether you are actually doing the things that you said you would do when you have to tell somebody else. When we have to tell ourselves, it's easier to kind of BS ourselves and say, no, I actually did it. Yeah, I kind of did it. I mostly did it. But when we have to tell somebody else, especially if that friend is somebody who's going to hold you accountable and it's not somebody that's going to sugarcoat things for you, when you have to tell that person, you can't lie to that person. Not in the same way that you can lie to yourself. We're pretty good at lying to ourselves. We're much, much worse at lying to other people, especially if that person can call you out on your BS. And so this kind of accountability can help you overcome the internal blocks that you have that you keep facing. Now, what can that accountability look like? It can look like having good friends. I always talk about the importance of having positive people in your life and the massive detriments that come with having negative people in your life. So for example, if you're trying to start and build a business, it would really help if you have a group of ambitious friends who are also trying to do the same or similar things, and you guys all talk to each other about what it is that you're doing, about the goals that you set a couple months ago and how you are on track to those goals or how you are not on track to those goals and what you're going to do to pivot, so on and so forth. This kind of accountability really helps because if those people are talking about the things that they're doing and they're telling you, hey, I'm actually doing the things that I said I was going to do, and you're not, you're going to go, holy crap, I'm falling behind. Let me actually do the things that I said I was going to do. And that external accountability can help you stay disciplined and consistent. Now, me personally, two of my favorite ways to stay accountable is number one, I have an Apple Watch competition with one of my friends, Corey. Shout out Corey in the comments. And the way these Happle competitions work is that you get certain points for calories burned, for minutes exercised, and for hours where you stood up. And so that keeps me accountable to get in the weight room, to go on a run, and to go to my jiu-jitsu classes. Now, the other thing that keeps me accountable in terms of jiu-jitsu is the actual jiu-jitsu class itself. Like I was saying earlier, it's really good to get around people that are gonna hold you accountable. And the jiu-jitsu culture is one of accountability. If you don't show up to class for a few days or a few weeks, people will look at you and they will say, hey, where have you been? And if you don't have a good reason other than, I was just tired and I was feeling lazy, then they're gonna look at you and they're gonna go, well, I'm getting better and you're not, and now I'm gonna be better at jiu-jitsu than you and I'm gonna tap you out. And so that level of accountability of other people holding you accountable to show up to the mats, as well as the fact that if they're training and you're not, they're gonna get better and you're not. In other words, if you're not showing up, if you're not staying disciplined and being consistent, you're gonna see your progress take a huge nosedive, while at the same time seeing other people's progress continue. That kind of external accountability really helps stay disciplined and consistent. The fourth habit is tracking your progress. I mentioned this a little bit before, but when we have really big goals and or we have really vague goals and or we don't break down those goals into manageable, measurable steps, little smaller goals, and or we don't keep track of our progress, we start to lose motivation. And while this video is about discipline and consistency and not necessarily about motivation, if you can have some level of motivation in the background that is somewhat pervasive, it's going to help you be more consistent and more disciplined. So if you can reward yourself for the little successes that you achieve throughout the weeks, that will help you stay consistent. And the way you know whether you're having those little successes is by tracking your progress. And also, it's not just about the underlying level of motivation that you can feel on a consistent basis. It's also about the fact that if you feel and you know and you see data that tells you that you are moving closer to your goals, that is going to help you stay disciplined and consistent. Because if you don't have any form of data that tells you that you are in fact getting closer to your big goals, there may very well be voices in your head that say, why are you even doing this? We're not even getting any closer. But it would really suck if you have those voices and you are actually getting closer, but you don't know it because you're not tracking your progress. So tracking your progress helps you see the progress even when you can't feel it, and that helps you stay disciplined and consistent. And finally, the fifth habit that ties them all together is the habit of challenges. Now, if you've been watching my channel for a while now, you know that I am a big proponent of 90-day challenges. If you can't do 90 days, if you can't do 30 days, 7 days, 24 hours, 1 hour, I don't care. Challenges in general. Andy Frisella has the same concept called 75 Hard. These kind of challenges build your self-confidence. And with an increased self-confidence, it is easier to stay disciplined and consistent. The reason why I personally like 90 days, which is pretty close to 75 days, is that 90 days to me is enough for a habit to change, number one, the way you see yourself, and number two, the way you see your life. So you can do something for 7 days, but it's not really going to change your identity, and it's not really going to change how you view your life. But if you do something for 90 days straight, it is, number one, it's going to get ingrained in you to an extent that it's going to probably change your identity of who you are, and hopefully in a good way if you're doing a good challenge. And number two, it's going to change the way you look at life, because you've been doing this thing for so long. Now your life is different. It has this new component in it, and that new component changes the lens through which you view the world. So not only do you view yourself differently, but you view the world differently. And hopefully the challenges that you are doing are helping you change the way you view yourself and the way you view the world in a much more empowering way. So these can be things like read every night for 15 minutes for 90 days, do a morning routine every morning for the first hour for 30 days. It doesn't even have to be a daily thing. It can be a weekly thing. You can say, I'm going to work out, I'm going to lift weights 5 times a week, every single week for 10, 12 weeks. And then once you do that, you start seeing results, you start changing your own identity, you start feeling a different way about yourself and about the world. And once the challenge is done, you decide, do you want to keep feeling this way? You probably will want to, or do you want to go back to what you were doing before? And the other cool thing about 90 days is that 90 days is a long enough time where the habit is already ingrained in you, even if it's a really hard habit. And by the time the 90 days is up, even if you give yourself the ability to stop doing that thing, there's a really good chance that you're not going to want to stop doing that thing because it's just habitual at that point. It's just a matter of inertia. And so you can take these challenges, and for any of the other 4 habits that I just mentioned, or for any other habit that you want to ingrain in your life, you can use these challenges is to ingrain that habit in your life. Now, if you like this video on the 5 habits to stay disciplined and consistent, I think you're really gonna like this video on 5 habits that 10x'd my productivity in 30 days and how they can do the same for you. And as always, if you like this content and you want to see more of it, make sure you subscribe to the channel, like the video, leave a comment, tell me what you liked, what you want to see more of, and also feel free to check out the link in the description box below where you can sign up for my weekly email newsletter where I send you content like this every week, every Monday via email to get you started for the week. Other than that, I'll see you in the next video.